My name won't matter much by the end of this story. Not to them, anyway. To them, I was never a person with feelings, limits, or dreams. I was a role, the responsible one, the fixer, the safety net, the bank. It started 5 years ago, after my sister Megan's second overdose. She was 24, living in a friend's garage, and barely alive when they found her. My parents were hysterical, but not for long. Once the panic settled, all eyes turned to me. Rehab isn't cheap. Insurance only covered so much. And somehow, my checking account became the obvious solution. I drained my savings. I mean all of it. Canceled my planned trip to Tokyo, where I'd dreamed of going since college. Sold my old Honda to cover the intake deposit. I told myself it was love, family, the right thing. And I believed that at first. But that was just the beginning. 3 months later, Mom's insulin costs shot through the roof. Her coverage lapsed because she forgot to update paperwork, and Dad couldn't deal with the website. I was working late nights at the firm and would come home to voicemails. "We know you're busy, honey, but if your mother dies, it'll be on your conscience." So I paid, and paid. When Dad's property taxes got misfiled and a foreclosure notice landed in his mailbox, I took out a personal loan. When Megan relapsed again and needed a new round of outpatient treatment, I co-signed, knowing she'd probably never pay a cent. I covered Megan's car insurance, her phone plan, and even her Uber account so she could get to therapy. Meanwhile, I wore the same 2 suits to work and learned to love canned soup. But I never said a word. Not really. They never asked how I was doing. They just assumed I was okay, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Because I had a job. Because I lived alone. Because I didn't scream or cry or crash into ERs. I started calling it the fund. Not out loud, but in my head. This invisible account everyone drew from, guilt-free. A bottomless well of support and stability. They didn't know how often I had to shift bills, delay rent, or juggle overdrafts. They didn't see me using one credit card to pay off another. They just saw calm, reliable me. "You're a rock," my mom would say. "We're lucky to have you." They weren't lucky. They were entitled. And I was too tired to correct them. There was no ceremony when I became their crutch. No dramatic moment where I raised my hand and said, "Yes, I will bankrupt myself for you." It happened in layers, slow, silent layers of expectation. Every family dinner, I was the one picking up the tab. Every holiday, I bought the gifts from all of us. I was the one who made spreadsheets for their budgets, who booked their doctor appointments, who stayed up until 2 a.m. helping Dad fill out refinancing forms because he didn't trust those online portals. And Megan was the center of the universe. Always fragile, always about to break. One time, she texted me at 3 in the morning. "I can't breathe. I messed up." I left work early the next day, drove 4 hours to her apartment, and found her stoned but alive. I paid the rent she'd missed, bought her groceries, and tucked her in. When I got back to my apartment, there was a pink slip taped to my door. "Rent overdue." Again. Still, I didn't say anything. I was the strong one. Strong people don't complain. Then came the promotion. I'd been working toward it for 3 years. More hours, more stress, and finally, my boss told me it was mine if I wanted it. But I'd have to relocate. Across the country. I'd be making double. I didn't tell anyone for a week. I kept the email flagged in my inbox, reading it over and over. Not because I was uncertain, but because I knew, deep down, what would happen if I accepted it. Sure enough, when I finally told them, the guilt machine kicked in. "But what about your mother's doctor visits? Who's going to keep Megan grounded? Can't you just work remote? Family comes first." I declined the promotion. That's when something inside me cracked. Not loudly, but like a quiet snap of a thread stretched too thin. It got worse after that. Megan got fired from another job and decided to take a break from life. My parents called it resting her nervous system. I called it being unemployed. Again, she moved back in with them, and suddenly their home became a drama vortex. Constant fights, late-night sobbing phone calls, threats of self-harm, and once, a police wellness check. Through it all, I kept wiring money. Groceries, copays, emergency pet surgery for her emotional support cat. Then, one day, Megan accused me of making her feel like a burden. "I never asked you to help," she snapped on the phone. "You chose this. You want everyone to think you're a saint." It hit like a gut punch. I sat in my car after that call, parked outside a CVS with a bag of insulin pens in my lap, and just stared at the steering wheel. Not crying. Just empty. 2 weeks later, they called a family meeting. A real one. Zoom. Mom's idea. We've been thinking, she said, hands clasped like a therapist. Maybe it's best for everyone, especially Megan, if you took some space. Just for a while. Dad chimed in. You can be a bit intense, son. It's triggering. Megan? She just sipped her tea and didn't say a word. They wanted me gone. So I left. But I took the fun with me. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't send a dramatic group text or post some cryptic quote on social media. I just stopped. No more weekly grocery transfers. No more surprise Venmos for prescriptions or gas money. I let Megan's Spotify family plan lapse. I didn't refill Mom's insulin until she asked, twice. And when Dad called to say the internet was down and can you log in and fix it, I said, sorry, I can't. I'm taking space. Like you asked. At first, there was nothing. Silence. They assumed someone else would step up. That the system would continue working, even without its invisible architect. But a week passed. Then two. The calls started again, tentative, then frantic. Mom. Hey honey, I think my card isn't working for the insulin refill. Can you check your end? Dad, mortgages due. Something weird with the bank app. Did you change the password? Megan, my therapist says I shouldn't stress over bills right now. Can you just cover rent this month? I'll pay you back when I'm better. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop, poured a whiskey, and began building a spreadsheet. I went back 5 years. Bank statements, receipts, email confirmations. Every dime I'd transferred, paid, covered, forgiven. Line by painful line. Insulin, $2,980. Rehab, 3 stints, $34,750. Mortgage bailouts, $14,200. Miscellaneous, bills, groceries, Megan's vet bills, $16,491. 13. Emergency fund loans never repaid, $19,000. Total, $87,421. 13. And that wasn't counting the missed promotion, the personal loans I was still paying interest on, or the mental toll of constantly living in a financial crouch. But none of them saw that. They saw a tight fist where there used to be an open hand. By the end of the month, I got a letter, paper, not email, from the bank. Overdraft notice for a joint account I'd forgotten even existed. One I opened years ago to help Dad get lower interest on a loan. Negative $2,300. I went to the branch in person and closed it immediately. Froze every other shared account. Changed my passwords. Flagged my credit. And that's when I saw it. A hard inquiry on my report from a bank I'd never heard of. A business loan application. For $80,000. In my name. I felt something go cold in my chest. I called the bank, pretending to be myself, but dumber. I don't remember applying. Can you tell me what business name I put? The woman on the line said, sure. It was M&M Wellness Center, LLC. You're listed as the sole guarantor. M&M, Megan and Mom. I hung up without another word. They weren't just leeching anymore. They were trying to bury me. I stared at the ceiling for 2 nights straight, barely sleeping, barely moving. My phone kept buzzing. Texts, voicemails, missed calls. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I wasn't going to react. I was going to respond. Slowly. Carefully. With receipts. I filed an identity theft report and put a fraud alert on my credit. The loan hadn't been approved yet. Thank God. But it was pending, and if I hadn't caught it in time, I would have been responsible for $80,000 of family wellness. They were willing to let me drown, just so Megan could open a yoga studio or whatever that scam was supposed to be. On the 3rd day, Megan finally messaged me. Why are you being like this? You're scaring Mom. This isn't healthy. The gall of it. I opened my spreadsheet again. Color-coded it. Added a pie chart for dramatic flair. Labeled the tabs. One read, documented transfers. Another said, verbal promises. The third was just titled receipts. Then I scheduled a Zoom call. Mom joined first, her hair in curlers, sipping from a wine glass. Dad appeared next, blurry and yelling at someone off-screen. Megan came last. Eyes already rolled halfway back in her head. Wow, she said. Is this an ambush or something? No, I said calmly. This is a reckoning. I shared my screen. They went quiet as I clicked through the tabs. This, I said, tapping the first column, is every dollar I've given you. Every bill I covered. Every lie I swallowed so you could feel safe, comfortable, enabled. Megan scoffed. You kept track? That's psychotic. No. What's psychotic is forging my name on a business loan application. What psychotic is gaslighting me into thinking I was never enough, while you drain me dry? Mom blinked. What loan? I clicked to a screenshot of the application confirmation. There was her email address, listed as a secondary contact. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, Dad said. We were going to tell you. Oh, when the payments defaulted, when my credit got destroyed, or when the IRS came knocking. Nobody spoke. I took a sip of water, feeling oddly calm. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to exile me and expect me to bankroll your chaos. You're overreacting, Megan snapped. Families help each other. You've always helped. And that, I said quietly, is over. I clicked the final slide. Total contributions, $87,421. 13. I've closed every shared account. Froze every card. Spoke to a lawyer. If you try to use my name again, I'll press charges. Mom started crying. You're punishing us. After all we've been through. No, I said. I'm just finally choosing me. I left the call without another word. After that Zoom call, the silence was immediate and deafening. Not the quiet kind, though. The calculating kind. The kind where people are scrambling behind the scenes, figuring out how to spin the narrative without you. Within 48 hours, my aunt texted me. Heard you had a meltdown. Just remember, Megan's fragile. My cousin messaged. You always seemed like the stable one. Hope you're getting help. It was laughable. They'd weaponized the word fragile so often it had become a license to hurt others without consequence. Megan couldn't be held accountable because she was fragile. Mom couldn't apologize because she was fragile. Dad couldn't deal with confrontation. He was fragile, too. And me? I was the strong one, which meant I was supposed to absorb the blows, finance the damage, and thank them for the opportunity. I moved fast, called every financial institution I'd ever used, froze all joint access, changed my banking passwords to long, vengeful phrases. I opened a new checking account and rerouted my direct deposit. I even took the petty step of unsubscribing Megan from my Amazon Prime family plan. A week later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought you'd understand. Megan's life has been hard. You've always been stable. You never complained. That's why we assumed it was okay. You made it seem okay. That last line broke something in me. You made it seem okay. As if their comfort depended entirely on my ability to suffer silently. As if not falling apart was the same as giving permission to be used. I kept reading. We're willing to talk, but you need to let go of the bitterness. Families forgive. There was no apology. No mention of the loan fraud. No acknowledgement of the years I spent living paycheck to paycheck while they played house with my income. Just forgiveness. Not theirs, of course. Mine. As if the only thing wrong was that I finally had the nerve to say no. I called my lawyer and filed a cease and desist. Sent copies of the fraudulent loan paperwork to the credit bureau and attached my police report. I wasn't taking chances anymore. Then I turned off my phone, packed a single bag, and checked into a cabin 2 hours north, where the Wi-Fi barely worked and the air didn't smell like guilt. That night, I sat by a fire I'd built myself, poured a glass of cheap wine, and opened my laptop. I wrote a letter, not to them, but to myself. It started with, "You are not a bank. You are not a hero. You are a man who deserved peace long before he earned it." And it ended with, "They only loved you as long as you made their lives easier. Now, make yours easier. Love yourself the way they never did." Then I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the silence finally feel like freedom. After a few days off-grid, I turned my phone back on. Over 100 unread messages. Missed calls. Voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I set up a new number, notified my HR department, and sent a single group text to my immediate family from the old one before I deleted it entirely. This number is no longer in use. I won't be reachable through it again. Do not contact me further unless it's through legal counsel. Then I left the group chat for good. You'd think that would be the end. You'd think they'd accept the silence as a clear boundary. But people like them don't understand boundaries unless they're enforced with bricks and locks. A week later, I got a message through LinkedIn from my father, LinkedIn, of all places, telling me that Mom was sick with stress, that Megan had spiraled again, and that I should at least have the decency to check in. Decency. That word rattled in my head for days. What decent man lets his family go hungry? What decent brother abandons his sister in recovery? What decent son cuts off his diabetic mother? But none of them had asked, What decent family tries to steal $80,000 from the one person holding them together? I ignored the message. I started going to therapy. My new therapist, a woman named Nadine with tired eyes and a spine made of steel, asked me a simple question that shattered me. Who taught you that love had to be earned through suffering? I didn't have an answer. Not at first. But eventually, I found one. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 microcuts. A lifetime of being praised for being quiet, responsible, generous. A boy who learned that good meant useful. That love was conditional. And the condition was self-erasure. I wasn't a martyr. I was a hostage in a house made of obligation. So I let go. I sold my apartment. Took a job in another state. Smaller firm. Less pay, but better hours and no ghosts in the walls. I got rid of everything I didn't need. Canceled every recurring charge that wasn't directly tied to my life. No more family Spotify. No more shared Amazon. No more shared anything. Freedom felt strange at first. Like an outfit I didn't think I was allowed to wear. Then one night, I went to a late movie by myself. Bought the overpriced popcorn. Laughed louder than I meant to. And when I got home, I sat in the dark, smiling. Not because everything was fixed, but because, for once, none of it was my problem. It's been 13 months since I walked away. In that time, I've moved twice, changed jobs once, and started therapy that no longer feels like triage, it feels like healing. I hike now. I sleep through the night. I take my coffee hot, not in a travel mug, and I no longer check my bank balance with a pit in my stomach. I haven't spoken to my family. Not once. I've heard things, sure, through mutuals, ex-coworkers, even an old neighbor who ran into my dad at a gas station. Megan's wellness center idea collapsed before it began. The loan was denied, thanks to my fraud report. Dad's house went into foreclosure, and Mom moved in with a cousin. There was a GoFundMe at one point, titled, Help a Family Recover from Betrayal. They raised $320. I printed the page, framed it, and put it in my closet. A reminder. Sometimes I still feel guilt. Not the kind they trained into me, the real kind. The ache of knowing people I once loved are struggling. The heaviness of choosing yourself when you were raised to believe that self-worth comes from self-sacrifice. But guilt is not the same as regret. Because here's what I've learned. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still never let them near you again. You can be a good person and still refuse to be their savior. For years, I wore the badge of the good son, like it was armor. I thought it made me strong, useful, noble. But all it made me was tired. I don't miss the chaos. I don't miss the calls, the crises, the way they only said, I love you, when they needed something. I don't miss being responsible for adults who made me the villain the second I set a boundary. No one ever apologized. I don't expect they ever will. But here's the difference. I'm not waiting for it. The other day, I walked past a mother yelling at her kid in a grocery store. You never think about anyone but yourself, she barked. And the kid, maybe 10, shrunk down, went quiet, and said, sorry. I felt something twist in my chest. Because I used to be that kid. Now, I'm a man who knows the difference between selfishness and self-respect. I live in a small apartment with no roommates, no shared bills, no secret emotional landmines. I have an emergency fund, a therapist, a cat named Ledger who hates everyone but me, and peace. Real, echoing, soul-splitting peace. Sometimes I still hear their voices in my head. You're overreacting. You're the problem. You used to be better. But I answer back now. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Just with truth. I wasn't better then. I was buried. And now I'm free. I'm not the villain in their story. I'm the one who finally escaped it.